So, Dead by Daylight collab with Tokyo Ghoul to bring its first anime chapter to the game. Ken Kaneki is probably one of the most fun killers to play as in the game. He does come with a few flaws. Hitboxes. But as of recently, I've been thinking, if Dead by Daylight were to do another anime chapter, what anime would it be? Now, there are many animes that could be a potential candidate. For example, Chainsaw Man, Attack on Titan, Death Note, and Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Okay, that last one is more like a solo survivor chapter, but there are many animes that have the potential to come to Dead by Daylight. But out of all the anime that I have watched, I think the one anime with the most potential as a chapter would be, roll the drum roll please, Death Note. For those that don't know, Death Note is a mystery psychological drama anime. It follows Light Yagami, the protagonist of the series. He finds a black notebook that has the ability to kill people just as long as you know their name and face. Light's goal is to cleanse the world of sin and be the god of the new world, but this task isn't easy for him. After a bunch of killings starts to happen, L has to step in. L is considered the world's greatest detective, and he tasks himself with stopping Kira. So for the remainder of the show, it's psychological warfare of L versus Kira. Now that I give a simple explanation about Death Note, let me talk about how it could work in the game. Like I said before, I imagine this to be a full chapter, but instead of one survivor and one killer, we will do two survivors and one killer. The survivors being Light Yagami and L. I know some of you probably thought I would put Light Yagami as a killer because of the many concepts out there saying he could be a killer, but I just don't see how Light could work as a killer. So I decided the killer of this chapter will be Ryuk. That's right, the Shinigami that follows Light throughout the entire show. I would like to think this would be the choice the entity makes, and one last thing. I would like to think it's the choice the entity makes maybe through a deal or negotiation, and one last thing before the video begins. Thank you to Flip Loops for providing me with the survivor footage. I try to get my own survivor footage, but I learned I'm very bad at chases. So, make sure you check out Flip Loops and subscribe to him. Also, disclaimer, I know jack shit about Dead by Daylight, so some of this might be OP. That's why I had Floop helping me out. Anyways, on to Light. So let's kick things off by explaining the survivors of this chapter, starting off with Light Yagami, otherwise known as Kira. But I will mention when I start explaining the perks, there will be some spoilers, that's your warning. Alright, so Light Yagami would come with 3 unique perks: New World Order, This is Justice, and Price of Many. Each perk is based on an event in the show, so now sit tight and allow me to explain each perk. Starting off with New World Order. Once the killer initiates a chase with a survivor that isn't you, you will be able to see the killer and survivor's aura for 4, 8, 12 seconds. If you are the survivor that the killer ends up chasing, then you will not leave scratch marks for the first 6, 7, 8 seconds of chase. This perk has a 40-second cooldown. Now, let me explain. In the show, Light is extremely intelligent, so I wanted to think of a way that I could show his intelligence in game. But then I also remembered Light is very aware, so due to him being aware, I thought the perfect kind of perk for Light would be Aura Reading. The name of the perk comes from those who support Kira in the show. The more people that supported Kira, the more his ego would rise. Without sugarcoating, Light uses people to get his way. Misa is a prime example of Kira using other people to get his way. The reason for no scratch marks is because even when Light is being suspected as Kira, he remains calm and still kills without leaving a trace. I would like to think this perk would be good with Sprint Burst too. For our second perk, This is Justice. If another survivor gets put into the dying state while you are on the hook, your hook timer will pause for 10, 15, 20 seconds. This will only work once per hook stage. Now, let me explain. In the show, Light shows a strong sense of justice. He solely believes everything he's doing is for justice. So the best way of inputting this into Dead by Daylight is by making it hook related. I could have made it chase related and ended up going with something to do with the mending state, but we have a lot of that already. The name of this perk comes from the final episode when Light is cornered by Nier. Even when cornered, his sense of justice still remains even as he's about to die. This perk is really similar to Reassurance, but instead of another player doing it, you could do it yourself. If you're playing with friends, you can run this perk and Reassurance, and you will not die on hook. I would say this is pretty strong, maybe even too OP. Why am I even making perks? For the last perk, Price of Many. Upon entering the match, you become the obsession. If a survivor beside yourself gets hit, you gain a token. Each token you receive will grant you a 2, 4, 6% boost in any action you do. If you get hit and you will lose a token, you can gain a max of 6 tokens. As long as you remain the obsession, the perk will remain active. Generators do not get affected by action speed. Now, let me explain. In the anime, Light showed his stealth, skill, and intelligence. Even in plain sight, he manages to be sneaky. So, the best way of putting it into Dead by Daylight is by making this an obsession perk. The name of this perk is a reference towards all the FBI agents that Light managed to kill single-handedly. If I made this perk also work towards generators, then it would be pretty OP, so that's why I'm not allowing it to work towards gens, but With other actions, stuff can get done pretty quick. Before we dive into L's perk, I feel like I should explain L's character. Careful spoilers ahead. L is the antagonist of the series, and he is the world's best detective. He decides to take on the Kira case and claim justice. After a few days of investigating, L starts to suspect Light as Kira, so he ultimately reveals himself to Light. L recruits Light to join his task force, and then from there, L tries many methods to prove Light was Kira, but never gathered enough evidence. But L still had hope. I hope that was at least a good explanation. It probably wasn't, but I don't want to waste any more of your time explaining L's backstory, so I'll just get right into the gist of things. L will be the second survivor coming along with this chapter. His 3 unique perks will be social awareness, still and steady, and identity compromised. Now, allow me to explain. I'll start off with social awareness. Once healing a survivor out of the dying state or injured state, you are able to see the aura of all survivors and killers for 4, 8, 10 seconds. Now, in Death Note, L is shown to be very aware and also intelligent. He observes everyone's actions and movements very closely to see if it reveals the smallest clue. This perk I found very chill, like not overpowered, not underpowered. You can for sure find some use for it in some situations. Running this perk could actually encourage people to heal their teammates, because I know there are some people who don't like killing for some reason. The name of this perk is based on L, which is single-handedly predicting Kira's exact actions. I was honestly surprised I was able to come up with an entire perk based on that scenario. For L's second perk, still and steady. While preparing your generator by yourself, your great skill check zones become 20, 25, 30% bigger. The louder the hard peak gets within 8, 16, 32 meter radius of the killer. The faster you start to repair a generator by 6, 7, 8%. Does not work while injured. Now, allow me to explain. In the anime, L is actually always seen sitting down and not usually standing. I don't know if most people notice, but the way L sits is actually the healthiest way to sit when it comes to your heart. It gives your heart an easier time pumping blood. This perk also applies some risks, since there are some players that like staying on generators even while the killer is staring right at them. I decided to make a perk just for them. I kind of already stated why the perk is named this, so that means we could just dive into our third perk, Identity Compromise. Upon cleansing a totem, you will gain the Expose status effect for 90, 60, 30 seconds. Cleansing the totem will grant your team a 3, 4, 5% repair speed in generator repairs for 5, 10, 15 seconds. Allow me to explain. In the beginning of the anime, L is very persistent on keeping his identity hidden, but as the anime goes on, L does a lot of risky things, like revealing his identity to Light, the one of the many things he wanted to keep hidden. I wanted to make this perk risky because of that, so what better thing to do is make the perk make you get the exposed status effect. But it also gives your team a little boost, so I would suggest cleansing a totem once you know your team is working on stuff. The name of the perk comes from when L ends up dying to Rem. That's kind of it for the explanation. It's just that singular scene where I got this entire thing from. Alright, now we move to the longest part of the video, and that's explaining the power and perks of the Shinigami. I hope you end up liking the power. If not, suggest in the comments on what you would have done for the Shinigami. I'll start off by simply just reading off his power and then give a deeper explanation afterwards. The killer of this chapter is Ryuk, aka the Shinigami. His special ability is Shinigami Eyes. The Shinigami can charge and activate his Shinigami Eyes. When charged, the Shinigami will enter an in-depth vision mode. When in this mode, if a survivor is watched for 3 seconds without the Shinigami's view being obstructed, then the Shinigami will learn the name of the survivor within his 32-meter range of in-depth vision. The name will then be added to the Death Note. Passive ability, Foresight. The Shinigami will also be able to see what hook stages survivors are on, along with knowing what action the obsession is doing. Special ability, Death Note. Once the name has been learned, the Shinigami then has access to the Death Note. With the Death Note, the Shinigami can choose one of the names they have access to and choose to give that survivor a fate. The fates will always be decided at random. Vaulting, dropping a pallet, repairing a generator, unhooking, healing, or opening a chest. If a survivor doesn't end up doing their fate within 45 seconds, their aura will be revealed for 3 seconds. If a survivor does their deadly fate within the 45 seconds, then they will gain the exposed status effect for 30 seconds. The killer will also see the aura of the survivor for 6 seconds. The Shinigami will have to use his eyes again after a survivor is hooked and relearn their name. The Death Note has a cooldown of 15 seconds. The Shinigami does not know what fate a survivor has. Alright, so that's the Shinigami's power. I hope you liked it, but let me go more in depth now. When it comes to Ryuk, I wanted to make his power related to what an actual Shinigami could do. Like in the show, it's mentioned that Shinigami has special eyes that can see when a person will die. It's also very well known that each Shinigami has a Death Note of their own. So my thought process was, we can include both these as his power. So I decided to have his main active ability be Shinigami Eyes, and have that play into his second active ability, Death Note. When it comes to the Shinigami Eyes, I like to think of it like Ghostface on Michael's stock, but maybe a little longer distance. Now, the reason why I added without the Shinigami's view being obstructed is because when it comes to similar abilities like Ghostface and Michael Stockton, you don't get punished for being seen. So Ryuk's in-depth vision has to fully charge in order to learn the name. If his view is obstructed, then he has to restart his charge. But once the name has been successfully gathered, then you have the ability to open the Death Note. Upon opening the Death Note, you will see a page layout with all survivors in the match on it. If the survivor faded out, then that means you did not collect their name. If the survivor has clear color, then you can click them and write their name to apply a random effect. Honestly, I don't have much to explain on the Death Note part of his ability because it's pretty self-explanatory. Well, I guess it's time to tell you the perks, huh? But before I do that, I would suggest staying tuned till the end because I made a total of 6 perks for each character, but only 3 of them made the cut as their main perks. Now, enough stalling. Did you know only 2.7% of you are subscribed? For those of you that aren't, you better subscribe. Anyways, Ryuk's 3 main perks are Unwritten Rule, Shinigami's Gift, and Hex Heart Attack. Let's start off by explaining the first perk, Unwritten Rule. Once per trial, when its generator is completed while a survivor is hooked, all other survivors scream and reveal their locations for 6 seconds. Additionally, all unhooking speed is reduced by 20% for 12, 14, 6 seconds. When it came to making this perk, I had one thing in mind, that thing being if a Shinigami kills anyone but the owner of the Death Note, they will die. An example of this is when Rem uses the Death Note to kill L for the sake of Misa. So I wanted to make a perk similar. The best way I could have put it was in a survivor perspective. So basically, Shinigamis can't kill out of greed for more years in life. So let's implement greed. What's a greedy thing to do in DBD? Repairing generators or saving your teammates. The amount of times I have been on hook and see a gen pop is so fun. So I took advantage of that for a perk. Take that, nerds. I used gen progression to give the killer an advantage. I bet that hasn't been done before. The second perk that a Shinigami has is Shinigami's Gift. When a survivor picks up an item, they suffer from exhausted and blindness for 10, 12, 14 seconds. This perk is rather simple, it's pretty straightforward. Pick up an item and you become exhausted and blind. But I'm going to explain how I came up with it, like I have been doing. Holy, I can't English. So if you watch the anime, then you know Ryuk likes apples. Anytime he sees an apple, he gets tempted to eat the apple. Sometimes he goes for it, sometimes he doesn't. So the items the survivors pick up in this case will represent the apples, meaning if the survivors want items, then you might have to make a small sacrifice while doing it. Fun fact, did you know that apples actually represent greed? You can blame Adam and me on that one. The Shinigami's final perk is Hex Heart Attack. Every time your position is hit, you gain a token. You can gain up to 4 tokens total. 1 token, your heartbeat terror radius decreases. 2 token, a random survivor vision starts to appear blurry for 10, 20, 30 seconds. Every 45, 35, 25 seconds. 3 tokens. Survivors do not hear chase music, they only hear slow thumping heartbeats. 4 token. Survivors' repair speed gets 7, 8, 9% slower. Now, it might be pretty obvious where I got this idea from. Usually when a Shinigami kills, it is typically from a heart attack. But I want to explain the perk a little more, explaining why each token has a certain effect. So upon getting 1 token, your heartbeat terror radius is decreased. By how much, I have no clue. I'm not an expert on distances when it comes to DBD. Alright, so the reason why I have it decreased for the first token is simply because it's meant to be a light punishment. After all, it's only 1 token. But I want to add the death factor into it by not noticing the killer until he's much closer. The second token makes your vision blurry. Why do you ask? Because foggy vision is a symptom of a heart attack, but not gonna lie, blurry vision is a symptom of most things. But yes, a heart attack. I can only imagine you're repairing a generator and then randomly your screen gets blurred. Like, not blurred to the point where you can't see, but enough to annoy. Something like this if I remember to show this on screen. Now, for the third token, you don't hear chase music and instead it gets replaced by slow thumping heartbeats. Now, why is this necessary? In Death Note, when death is occurring, you hear a loud thumping of a heartbeat. So I decided to replace the chase music with this loud thumping. Look how smart I am. I don't even know if this perk is balanced. Probably not, knowing me. Now, the fourth token, survivors' repair speed becomes slower. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I just ran out of ideas, so I just inserted gen regression down. But this might fuck up his unwritten rule perk.
Yo, who made these perks again? I did?
Oh, fire me, please. But anyways, that wraps the Shinigami up. I will show you the perks that didn't end up making the cut. But before I do, if you think any of the fallen perks are better and wondering why they didn't make the cut, you can blame my friend Floop Floops. He chose all the survivor perks, and when it came to choosing the killer perks, I asked Floop, Aji, and Super. So I combined their opinions to choose it. But nah, I don't actually blame them. Floop helped out a lot for making the perks for survivors balanced. because I had no idea what I was doing. Anyways, I'll just read them off and you can tell me what you think in the comments below. Alright, the retcon perks for Light Yagami were Boon, Hidden Department, Death Note, and Kira Takeover. Starting off with Boon, Hidden Department. Upon blessing a dual/hex totem, the killer will no longer be able to hear any kinds of sounds. Repairing, cleansing, mending, vaulting, searching within a 10, 20, 30 radius of the Boon totem. Next was Death Note. You enter the trial with the Death Note. The entity rewrote the notebook to match the world it's currently in, so it can no longer be used for murder. Once any gen is completed, grant access to do one of the following. Play a noise notification randomly somewhere on the map for the killer. This action has a cooldown of 120, 80, 40 seconds. Play a survivor groaning sounds for the killer to hear at random points. This action has a cooldown of 120, 80, 40 seconds. Play a sound of a generator being completed for the killer. This action has a cooldown of 120, 80, 40 seconds. Play the sound of the exit gates powering up. This action has a cooldown of 120, 80, 40 seconds. This perk in general has a cooldown of 140, 20 seconds. The third perk for Light was Kira Takeover. After summoning the killer 3 times, you will have the ability to use the entity to block a pallet, vault, locker, and totem for 5, 10, 20 seconds. After the perk wears off, you will not be able to use the perk for another 180, 120, 60 seconds. Killers cannot break a pallet. This is blocked by an entity. Survivor cannot vault the pallet. Killer cannot vault a blocked window. Survivor cannot vault a blocked window. When a totem or locker is blocked, the survivor and killer both can't access it. Let me know what you thought of Light's retcon perks in the comments below. Let's move on to L now. The retcon perks for L were Evidence Before Conviction, Spokesperson, and World's Greatest Detective. The first perk being Evidence Before Conviction. Upon searching your chest, you can get an uncommon, rare/very rare item along with the 2 random add-ons of that same rarity. L's second perk being Spokesperson. To activate this perk, you must start repairing a generator with the obsession. Upon the obsession entering a chase with the killer, you will gain 2, 3, 4% increase of speed to all actions. If the obsession ends up dying, you will gain a 5% increase of all actions the remainder of the match. And L's final perk being World's Greatest Detective. If you spend a total of 90, 60, 30 seconds walking while in chase, then you will receive a token. If you are hit while in the injured state and you have a token, then you will be put into the mending state. You can get a max of 2 tokens. If you are hit while in the health state, then you lose a token. And now let's move on to Ryuk, aka the Shinigami. The Shinigani's 3 retcon perks were Fruit of Boredom, Death Takes Time, and Scourge Hook Death God. Ryuk's first perk being Fruit of Boredom. After 60 seconds without being in chase, a random generator becomes blocked for 12, 14, 16 seconds. While blocked, all survivors within 8 meters of that gen suffer from blindness and exhaustion. Going on to his second perk being Death Takes Time. Each time a survivor enters a locker, cleanses or blesses a totem, or escapes a chase that lasted at least 35, 25, 15 seconds, you gain 1 token, max 3, 4, 5. At max tokens, the next time a survivor is hooked, 1 random survivor becomes exposed for 20 seconds. Tokens are consumed. Low-key, I'm so happy Death Takes Time did not make the cut. And Ryuk's final perk being Scourge Hook Death God. 4 random hooks become Scourge Hooks. If a survivor gets unhooked while you're in chase with another survivor, then the unhooker will become oblivious for 20, 30, 40 seconds. The person you are chasing will receive the hindrance status effect. Well, I got through those bonus perks as fast as I could, so let me know what you all thought in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and comment and subscribe. And if you haven't already subscribed to Floop Loops, then go sub to him because he helped me out a lot with this video. If you want more DBD content like this, then you know what to do. Ask! Enough stalling. Have a good rest of your day. Woo-woo!